Now, let me take you to where I live. I live in Loma Linda, big medical school, 700 medical students there. Famous place, actually, at least we think of it in these terms. Loma Linda is also known for its Adventist health study. Now, let me tell you something about this. The Adventist population, which is a fairly, how should I say this, conservative Christian group of people. There are probably about 1 million or so here in North America. The Adventist people are the longest living people in the Western world. They're the blue zone people. I was just told last week that out of these, when you take the medical students and the graduate students out of the mix, the university there, you probably have 20,000 people in that town. About half of these people are Adventists. So you have about 10,000 people that are Adventists. And in these 10,000 in this group there, you have 49 people over 90 years of age. Okay? I mean, these people drive cars. I mean, the editor of National Geographic wanted to do an interview of one of the ladies, 102 years of age. He made an appointment. He met her at the right time where she lives. And she said, listen, I don't have very much time right now, but why don't we get in my car and we can talk in the car. You can interview me there. And he said, you drive? You have a license? So, yeah, I'm doing okay. So she brought a new Cadillac out, 102 years of age. He got in, and she thundered down the road. And he said, wait, you're in a big hurry, aren't you? He said, I have to be. I don't have that much time left. Humor, optimism, right? Another man came to the banker there in Loma Linda, and a 91-year-old gentleman, and he wanted to have his mortgage refinanced. And the banker said, well, what do you want? Do you want 15 years or 30? No, I want 30 years. You know, this is the spirit of being a winner, right? So that's Loma Linda. And what's so unusual about this population is that these people, they have a fairly homogeneous lifestyle. They don't smoke by and large. They don't use alcohol by and large. They usually have some exercise. But they have an interesting dietary differentiation among themselves. Some of these Adventist people are meat eaters, carnivores. Some of these people are lacto-ovo-vegetarians. And a very small group is a vegetarian, a pure vegetarian. So the National Institute of Health came to them and said, look, we want to see what the effect of different diets are on cancer and heart disease. You have a population here. Can you do something about this? And so they did. And the university has received probably close to $35 million. It is one of the best-known population study probably in the Western world. And here's what they found. They did one 35-year-old study. This is a 35-year follow-up on some 30,000 Adventists in California. And they found that the Adventist meat eaters had only 64% of the expected fatal heart disease rate when compared to a comparable group of Californians. So they match up all the income levels, education, and so on. And what is left? Lifestyle. Why do you think the Adventist meat eaters have a lower heart disease rate than the California cohort of regular meat eaters? What do you think makes the difference? What makes the difference? No. What makes the difference? What makes the difference? They don't smoke. Remember? So the Adventists don't smoke. So they probably have a distinctive advantage there. Also, they have a fairly good social support system, which may also perhaps enter here. There are many, many issues, really. But I think the most important factor here that differentiates the Adventist meat eaters from the California meat eaters are they don't smoke. They don't drink, and I don't know if drinking would have a big effect on heart disease. That can be debated. But the important point for you here is look at the Adventists among themselves. You compare the Adventist meat eaters with the Adventist pure vegetarians, and the difference is 300%. Difference. 3 times more. Are you with me? Yeah. So there must be some advantages to moving away from animal products, would you say? And mind you, these are not necessarily a healthy vegetarian people because they still have all their processed foods to worry about, right? And they have these phony bolognas, those meat analogs. Now, these are not necessarily healthy foods either, but they might be a little bit better than the meat, but it's not really an ideal food, is it? It still has a nutrition label, right? You got it? Okay. Just want to make that point. So, this is then the Adventist health study number 1. And you can see here, this is now comparing Adventist meat eaters with Adventist lacto-ovo-vegetarians. These are not vegetarians, these are lacto-ovo-vegetarians. Milk and dairy, right? And eggs. So, the lacto-vegetarians have only half the amount of hypertension, about 2/3 the amount of arthritis, about 2/3 the amount of prostate cancer, and half the amount of colon cancer. Big time, isn't it? You want to cut colon cancer in half? Move towards a lacto-vegetarian diet. Are you with me? That's the lesson. So then the government said, look, we need to have a larger study than this where we can really study more intensely the pure vegetarians in your group. And so they did. And they started in 2001, the 7-year follow-up study on Adventists in North America, and they enrolled close to 100,000 people. Remember, they don't smoke, they don't drink. They are nice people. They go to church every week. They have a homogeneous lifestyle, but the people are different in their diet. And here you see the difference. About 9% are vegans. They're pure vegetarians. 31% of these Adventist people in North America are lacto-vegetarians. 10% are fish eaters. 6% are somewhat flexitarians. And 44% are meat eaters, carnivores. The question is, would there be a difference in chronic disease rates? What do you think? Would it be a significant difference? Let's take a look. This is now looking at weight. Here you see, these are the Adventist meat-eating women, comparing them with Adventist non-meat-eating women. And the difference is a cool, how many pounds? Almost 40 pounds difference. And you can see the other groups are sort of in between. It's a stepwise decline, isn't it? So what's the lesson here? If you want to really lose weight, move towards the green. Are you with me? Okay, what about men? Well, with men it's very similar. The difference is a bit smaller, but it's 30 pounds, 32 pounds difference. Same lesson coming to us. Then you look at diabetes in the Adventists. Those that are meat eaters have 4 times more diabetes than the pure vegetarians on this side here. And remember, they're all pretty much on the same dietary program. No, on the same lifestyle, except the area of animal products. I'm not even talking about processed foods. I'm just talking about animal products that are different here. So, less diabetes, less high blood pressure, about 1/4, as you can see there. And there's a stepwise progression here. It's amazing how it all turned out. And then when it comes to cholesterol, of course, here you can see that only 1/5 of the Adventist people on a vegetarian diet are actually being treated for high cholesterol levels. So what's the lesson here? If you want to do something about hypertension, diabetes, overweight, what else do we have? This is a memory test here. Heart disease, cholesterol. What do you think we ought to do? Begin to move in the direction of green. Yeah, green is in. Now, I want you to meet a very much revered person that I worked with for 5 years, Dr. Dennis Burkett. He's a very famous man. The Burkett lymphoma is a disease that he discovered and found healing for in Africa. He's also the man that's known as the Fiber Man. In 1993, just before he passed away, he said, the greatest medical discovery of the last 20 years, this was, looking back, was the understanding that our Western diseases, these are our modern chronic diseases, are largely lifestyle related, and therefore they must be preventable and potentially reversible. We no longer call them Western diseases because they have become global diseases. We're exporting these diseases. Now we refer to them as chronic diseases that are infiltrating all the countries, it seems, in the world. And so here's my question. We have talked about so far that many of our diseases are largely, especially when it comes to chronic disease, they're largely preventable. Have you made that point? Yes. Now, here's the question then. What would happen if we applied these preventive lifestyle-related strategies? You know, better diet, exercise, good attitude towards life. What would happen if we apply these preventive strategies to existing chronic disease? Could we arrest, disarm, and perhaps even reverse these diseases? Could that be the new paradigm of cure for diseases that are outside of the successful management of the medical profession with pills and procedures? That's the question. So I'm turning now. So let's take a look. We have known during World War II that when the Nazi armies occupied certain countries, like in this case the Scandinavian countries, when they did this, the people now had to live on very, very simple food because the Nazi armies took all the livestock to feed their soldiers. And the people were stuck with eating very simple foods. And the people got healthy. You can see it here. 1944, look how fast, within 3-4 years, you see a dramatic plummeting of coronary artery disease in the Scandinavian countries. And then the question was, well, when the war is over, what would happen then? People would probably go back to their diet that they had before. Will it go up again? That's exactly what happened. So it makes the point that there's a very strong association between the diet of a population and the diseases. We have known from animal products that you can develop these diseases in monkeys and other species very, very easily. All you have to do is feed them a typical American hospital diet. And in 19 months, these baboons will have died of massive heart attacks. That's why we tell our CHIP participants, don't stay in the hospital more than 19 months. It's a dangerous place. We can take those same monkeys before they die, and we give them a very simple diet, preferably a plant-based whole food diet. And within 2 years, you can take coronary arteries that were 80% narrowed in these monkeys because they were fed a typical American diet. You can open them up again. Amazing. So we have shown this, we're in World War II, that there's something going on. We can do it at random in most animal species. We can create the disease and we can reverse the disease. We're talking about heart disease now. What about humans? You have heard of the excellent work that Dr. Dean Ornish has done. You know, he took some 48 patients with coronary artery disease, and then he put them on a very simple vegetarian diet, foods as grown, versus the American Heart Association diet, and you can see the results. You can see here in the vegetarian diet, this was now 7% fat. The American diet is more like 35% fat, right? So this is a very low-fat, plant-based diet, right? Are we clear? And he showed that the cholesterol dropped by 24%, while on the American Heart Association it dropped 5%. At the same time, as the cholesterol dropped to 24%, the plaque reversed itself in 82% of the cases. While on the American Heart Association diet, in 53%, it progressed. So, if you want to use the American Heart Association diet, it might be helpful, to maybe slow down the disease process, but it's not going to be very successful in reversing the disease. You have an American diet that is way over here, and to say, well, we're going to make some changes. We go from 35% fat to 30% fat. We're going to go from the high salt to a little bit less salt. That's the American Heart Association diet, because we say, well, nobody's going to do it anyway. Yes, they do it if you train them. If they understand, people are willing, they're dying for information. So if you go from here to here, not much happens. But if you go from here and you move as far as you can in this direction, you multiply and you enhance and you increase the likelihood that something clinically very important is going to happen in short time periods. So here's Dr. Ornish then. He guides people through a rigorous lifestyle program, and he can show that he can reverse heart disease. You have heard of Dr. Esselstyn, one of my esteemed colleagues. He single-handedly, as a physician, one time a famous surgeon, began to take people that were given up on. These were the walking dead heart disease patients. Now, let me see, what does that mean? What does it say? Oh, 5 minutes. But I started 5 minutes late, so I take 10 minutes. Okay. 10 minutes. Okay. So he took the walking dead. They were given up by the Cleveland Clinic. He just said, look, I want you to eat very simple foods. Don't worry about anything else. I just want you to eat simple foods. I want you to get the cholesterol down to 150 points. I'll give you some medication if you need it. But after a while, we probably don't need the medication anymore. I want you to really demonstrate that if you keep the cholesterol below 150, you can reverse this disease. Here's what he found. Of course, he didn't allow them hardly any fats or anything like this. It's a very, very strict program. These were people that were in the waiting room of death. Okay? They were absolutely hopeless. They already had bypass surgeries. They had stents and so on. He took these 18 coronary patients. When they came in, they had been treated at the Cleveland Clinic at the cardiology department for 8 years. And during those 8 years, the cholesterol during that time had been at around 237. And during those 8 years, these 18 patients had 49 cardiovascular events. That means heart attacks, strokes, significant angina attacks, and so on, right? Just because you see the best cardiologist doesn't mean that you will not have cardiovascular events, right? Okay, so then they come to him, and over the next 5 years, they're on a very, very simple diet, these people, and their cholesterol is now down to 137. How many cardiovascular events happen in the next 5 years? They should have had probably 30, 40, because as you get older, after heart disease, it progresses in having more and more events. How many did they have? 0. Then he had another 12 years. What was it now? Cholesterol is down to 145, larger with diet, and the disease had regressed. Now, one person had a cardiovascular event, and you have perhaps seen his book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, which details his 18 patients. It's an excellent book. Highly recommend it. And of course, you see here, these are the coronary arteries. You see there's very much narrowing. There's not very much blood flowing through. This is after, 2.5 years later, the artery has totally opened up again, and blood is flowing at optimal levels. And so he said, we must shift the paradigm from interventional palliative cardiology to arrest and reversal therapy. We must change. He said to his colleagues, he said, we can hardly be proud of a drug and interventional therapy that results in death, morbidity, and inordinate expense. We must change. The point I want to make here is that it is, however, not just the diseases of the circulatory system. It's not just the diseases of the heart that we can reverse. I want to show you that we can go beyond this. We can do something about the other common diseases. Here you see Dr. Inder Singh, 1955, took 80 patients on insulin, gave them a very simple diet. Probably, if they had nutrition labels then, they wouldn't have had any on the foods then. This is very, very natural whole food diet, plant-based whole food. 50 of 80 patients on insulin were off in 6 weeks, and in 18 weeks, 85% of these insulin-using diabetics were free of all insulin, and their diabetic was basically gone. They were functionally no longer diabetics, as long as they followed a very simple diet. Dr. Anderson is a famous, well-respected man, has written over 500 scientific papers. He said that some 50% plus of our type 2 diabetics on insulin and over 80% of those on pills could normalize their blood sugars and be off medication within weeks if they changed their diet. Dr. Neil Barnard, outstanding work, showed the same thing. 71% of his diabetic patients were off the medication in less than 30 days by following a very simple plant-based whole food diet. What about high blood pressure? Here you see it again. Probably we have 68 million hypertensives. 60% of these hypertensives could be off the medication. Here's the Pritikin data where I used to work. Fabulous results there. 83% of these hypertensives were no longer on medication. They had been at least for 2 years on medication. They were off medication less than 4 weeks, and 80% were still off 2 years later. So what are we saying? The biggest challenge today in medicine is to educate, to motivate, and to inspire people to begin to take care of themselves under the guidance of an enlightened medical care system. How do we do this? How do we do this? The doctor has 7 minutes time. How are we going to do this? Grassroots movement, like what we're doing here, education. Let me tell you what I have done. And I don't want to sound self-serving, but we developed the CHIP program, the Complete Health Improvement Program, some 25 years ago. We have now over 65,000 people have gone through the program. It's a very intensive education program in groups. We show them not only why they should change, but we show them how to do it. So we have group discussions, we have food demonstrations, we have skill acquisition, which is very important. If you tell a person, hey, I want you to have a good breakfast, okay, I got it, bacon and eggs tomorrow. No. I want you to have a 7-grain cereal for breakfast with blueberries and some silk milk. Are you okay? What's that all about? It takes education. It takes time, and you have to do it in groups. I've done it one-on-one. I was a total failure. I do it in groups of 5, 50. I've had 500. I had 1,500 people in a group for 4 weeks, 4 times a week. Magic. People help people. Accountability, support in groups. And then, of course, we have to do cultural support systems. When I was in Rockville, Illinois, we had 3,000-4,000 people enrolled in the CHIP program there in Rockford. But we also had 27 restaurants that had at least 5 CHIP-approved meals. And they were not all vegans, but they were moving in that direction. We need to develop support systems. We cannot just tell people to do this and they think you're crazy. You're a health nut. No. And we have, listen to this. Listen, I'm going to get on my knees here to really try to reach you. We need to make this information, this education available to people, ideally in groups, but we have to do it in a caring, loving, supportive environment. It's not who is right and who is wrong. That's not the issue. The issue is you have to find the right educational moment to drop the pearl so it can be received and caressed and internalized. You don't want to be jackhammers. You know those jackhammers? Because you have no friends left after a while. You want to be like a cotton ball. Blow it in the direction, that special wisdom that has come to you as you have gone through different education experiences. Introduce people to a better lifestyle. Lovingly, caringly. Because you want to help. Because the planet survival is at stake. The ethics is at stake, the way we kill animals. Ecology is at stake. We have only one choice to reach people. Don't be a jackhammer. Be a loving person. Did I make that point? Otherwise, you do more harm than good. Here's then some of the results. We have published them in 31 scientific papers in the medical journals. The cholesterol drops about 20% in the high categories. The triglycerides drop in the high categories 44%, all in 4 weeks. And the blood sugars, here you see we had 525 diabetics. After 4 weeks of only 301 still testing diabetic. 4 weeks. Remember I said to you, you can turn them on, you can turn them off. In weeks. Well, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has said that these clinical results that have been published now are probably the most important clinical changes ever recorded in the literature. And the interesting thing is that these results were accomplished by volunteers. We gave them videotapes, very carefully structured. We spent some $7 million on the videos, and we give them textbooks and so on. And we meet every week for 2, 3, 4 times a week. Because if you meet once a week, that doesn't work, because there are 6 days of McDonald's tempting them. You have to establish new neurological pathways. That takes time and daily practice. You change the habit, you have to do it for 21 days every day, right? So one lecture a day is not going to do it. You see a dietitian 1 hour once a month, it's largely very questionable what good will come out of that. It helps the dietitian. Really helps the patient. Because when you change, when you deal with these diseases, you have to talk about lifestyle changes, habit patterns. That means constant practice. Let me just move towards the recommendations. We need to change the typical American diet composition. We need to move towards these kind of diets. Do you recognize these foods? Would you in favor of these foods? And when you do it, we found that you can lower the food bill by 35 to 40%. Don't believe what people say, well, if you eat healthy foods, that will cost you too much money. I can get it cheaper at McDonald's. If you want to get good nutrition, this is the cheapest way to get it and to be in health and turn your disease around, and you save on your medical bill big time. And you probably have to support your doctor with a subsidy. You didn't get that one, did you? So the optimal diet, and we have focused quite a bit on diet. I don't want to downplay the importance of a daily exercise program. I didn't do it this morning because I got in late last night. But I'm usually, yes, my wife, I'm usually on the track. I'm in the gym at 5:30 at the university gym in Loma Linda where I'm at. So I don't want to just talk about diet, but I think diet is probably an overriding concern. I'm sensitive to the presentation that was made here earlier about the molecules, about the environmental, and so on. I'm all in favor of that. But I think that diet probably has a very direct, measurable effect, and we can do something about it tomorrow. Right? So this is what we then recommend. Instead of saying, you've got to be a vegan. I didn't become a vegan overnight. It was in stages. And while some people, when they're very sick, they need to move in that direction as far as they can, I think most of the people, they're better served if we help them to reduce meat, dairy, eggs, processed foods, alcohol, and caffeine, and move more in this direction. And as they reduce this, they can now eat more fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and water. Do you think that's a reasonable approach? And people love it. This is then what we need to do. Medicine kicks in when it comes to chronic disease when you have a symptom. Oh, you got some chest pain. Oh, I know what to do. We need to give you some medication. Maybe we should do maybe an angiogram. Maybe you need to have a stent placed. This is what we do once symptoms happen. That's when you see the doctor. Doctors are not oriented towards preventing disease. They're not oriented towards promoting health. They're disease specialists. And they mostly treat, when it comes to chronic disease, just the symptoms without affecting curatively the underlying disease process. On the other hand, lifestyle medicine can kick in any time with symptoms or when you have a sign. A sign is you have a high cholesterol. You don't have symptoms yet, but you have a high cholesterol. That's a sign. You're on your way out the door. We can help you to make some changes. Through education, you develop growth and you move towards self-actualization. I have seen people, after 20 years, they come to me and they say, look, we've been following this program. And I'm sure that Dr. Clement could say the same thing with people that he sees regularly. They come and say to me, I feel younger now than 20 years ago. Why didn't anybody tell me that 20 years ago? And I say, yeah, I understand. So the goal of lifestyle medicine then is to optimize the diet, to get into a daily exercise program, to develop some clean habits, to develop a positive attitude, and we need to begin to focus on the idea that lifestyle medicine, this concept where you see people in groups, where you see them for an hour, for 2 hours, where you educate, inspire, and motivate, that has to become the new standard of medical care. Not just giving a pill and it brings down the blood sugar, now you're taken care of. or you take this medication here and you bring your diabetes down. That's not the answer, because the medication increases every year more and more, because the diabetes gets worse and worse and all the cardiovascular complications. That's what we do in medicine today. We look for the leaking pipes. We don't even clean them up. We just mop the floor. We have to look for the leaks. We have to ideally look where the weaknesses are so that there's no leak going to spring. And if there's a leak springing, we need to bandage it. We have to do something about it. And so here's my call for action to you. I wrote it out because I want to make sure that I really get this across to you very, very well. With most chronic diseases, which consume 84% of our medical dollar in America, with most chronic diseases, we cannot do it with a high-tech medicine approach. It is no longer sustainable. That approach that we have today comes too late. You do it after the heart attack. You do it after the cancer. It's too costly. A bypass, $150,000. And it doesn't cure. It may help the system, but it doesn't help the patient. But at best, this system approach treats and alleviates symptoms without really affecting the cure of the disease. We got to do it with a lifestyle medicine approach. And that requires education, motivation, and inspiration. But folks, I want to close where I started. It's not only about health anymore. It's not only about ecology anymore. It's no longer about ethics and the treatment of animals anymore. Today, it's about planetary survival. I want to see my grandkids be on this earth. That's my concern. All of us are needed as caring, passionate, yet loving evangelists for a new world order, for a new sanity, about making more responsible choices. God bless you. Thank you.